Did you know that some of the figures you admire today as female icons were born male? Caitlyn Jenner, Gina Rosero, Laverne Cox. All of them have gone through a transition that shocked the world. But what's the real story behind these transformations? Join us as we uncover the top 10 celebrities who transitioned and whose stories will surely surprise you. Chaz Bono. Behind the glittering lights of Hollywood, where fame often hides the truth behind carefully crafted images, lies the powerful and deeply human story of Chaz Bono. It is the story of a man who spent decades living according to expectations imposed by others before finally finding the courage to live for himself. Born in 1969 as Chastity, he was the only child of two cultural icons, Cher and Sonny Bono. From the outside, his life appeared charmed. Red carpets, television appearances, and constant media attention surrounded him from childhood. Yet behind that polished image was a child quietly wrestling with an identity he did not yet have the words to explain. From a very early age, Chastity felt profoundly disconnected from the feminine role the world expected her to embrace, feeling trapped in a body that never truly felt like home. As the years passed, that discomfort only grew heavier. He tried to follow society's expectations, believing that fitting in might bring peace or clarity. Instead, it brought confusion, isolation, and emotional pain. Fear became a constant presence. Fear of rejection, fear of disappointing his family, fear of losing love. To survive, Chastity learned to stay silent, maintaining a public image that pleased the world while privately battling deep emotional turmoil. For years, survival meant pretending. By the late 2000s, pretending was no longer possible. The cost of silence had become too great. Chastity stepped forward and introduced himself to the world as Chaz Bono. It was not a moment of celebration or applause, but one of immense courage filled with doubt, fear, and vulnerability. At the age of 40, Chaz began his physical transition, including medical procedures and testosterone therapy. His voice deepened, his appearance changed, and for the first time, his reflection began to align with who he had always known himself to be. Even today, Chaz has admitted that looking at old photographs of Chastity can be painful reminders of years spent living in a body that never truly belonged to him. But Chaz did not allow his journey to remain only personal. He transformed his struggle into purpose. Using his visibility, he became a vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, speaking openly about identity acceptance and the cost of silence. He also followed his parents into the entertainment world, breaking barriers as the first openly transgender man to play a male role in a feature film. His appearances in major television series, including American Horror Story, challenged Hollywood to see him not as a symbol, but as an actor, a professional, and a man in his own right. The transition was not difficult only for Chaz. It was also a profound adjustment for his mother, Cher. She has openly shared how challenging it was to let go of the image of her daughter and embrace her son. While the transition required time and learning, her love and pride in Chaz never wavered. Their relationship became a public example of how love can evolve even when understanding takes time. Chaz Bono's story is not a fairy tale with an effortless ending. It is a story of loss, courage, and rebirth. In a world built on appearances and expectations, Chaz chose honesty over comfort. His journey stands as a reminder that the bravest act is not becoming famous, but becoming true to yourself even when the cost is high. Jazz Jennings. For most children, growing up happens quietly, protected within family walls and school hallways. For Jazz Jennings, childhood unfolded under the gaze of the entire world. From a very young age, Jazz knew exactly who she was. Despite being born with a body the world labeled male, she consistently and confidently identified as a girl. There was no confusion in her mind, only frustration that her outer appearance did not reflect the truth she felt inside. As a small child, Jazz gravitated toward dresses, makeup, and high heels borrowed from her sister's closet. These choices were not acts of rebellion, they were expressions of identity. When adults referred to her as a boy, Jazz corrected them without fear or hesitation. In her innocent logic, she believed that one day something magical would happen, that her body would finally match who she already knew herself to be. What made Jazz's story remarkable was not only her clarity but the response of her family. Instead of silencing her, they listened. Instead of forcing her to conform, they believed her. Their love became her shield in a world that often responds to difference with cruelty. At just 6 years old, Jazz came out publicly in an interview with Barbara Walters, becoming one of the youngest transgender children to do so on national television. That moment changed her life forever. Visibility brought understanding and support, but it also brought hatred, judgment, and relentless scrutiny. Jazz did not simply grow up, she grew up under expectation debate and constant public attention long before she was old enough to fully understand the weight of it. As she entered her teenage years, Jazz continued to share her journey through the TLC reality series I Am Jazz. Cameras followed her through school friendships, body image struggles, mental health challenges, and complex medical decisions. Every milestone became public. Every setback became a lesson observed by millions. Growing up is difficult for any child. Growing up as a symbol for an entire community is something few could endure. Despite the pressure, Jazz never lost her voice. She spoke openly about anxiety, self-doubt, and the emotional cost of constant visibility. She also became a powerful advocate for transgender rights and youth acceptance, reminding the world that identity is not something chosen for attention, but something deeply known. In 2014, she was named one of Time magazine's most influential teens, not because of fame, but because of courage. When asked how she handles judgment, Jazz answered with clarity beyond her years. The only opinion that truly matters is her own because she gets to define herself. Jazz Jennings' story is not about perfection. It is about honesty, resilience, and the bravery it takes to grow up authentically in a world still learning how to listen. If you had known who you truly were at such a young age, would you have had the courage to speak up like Jazz? Let us know in the comments. Andrea Pejic. In the ruthless world of high fashion, where beauty is currency and difference can be both a gift and a risk, few stories are as striking as that of Andrea Pejic. Long before she became a symbol of authenticity, Andrea was known for something the industry rarely named out loud. She was genderless. Designers were captivated. Cameras adored her sharp features and delicate elegance. She walked women's runways with effortless grace, blurring boundaries others were afraid to touch. From the outside, success seemed to come easily, but behind the applause was a quiet struggle that began long before fame. Born in Bosnia and raised in Australia, Andrea grew up feeling different in ways she could not explain. As a child, she was drawn to things society labeled feminine makeup dresses and gentle moments shared with her mother. These moments felt natural yet dangerous because the world had rules and boys were not meant to feel this way. As she entered her teenage years, her appearance became increasingly unconventional. People stared, some admired, others mocked. Bullying and isolation followed, leaving scars that success could not erase. Fashion became her refuge, the one place where difference was not punished but praised. And within that space, her career soared. Still, fame could not fill the emptiness she carried. For years, the thought of transitioning lived silently in her mind. It was not just a medical choice. It meant risking everything she had built: her career, her relationships, and her place in an industry that loved her precisely as she was, or rather as it wanted her to be. But living a lie has an expiration date. In 2014, Andrea made the decision that changed her life forever. She chose herself. The transition was neither quick nor glamorous. It required psychological evaluations, medical preparation, and enormous emotional strength. It demanded patience, courage, and a willingness to face uncertainty. When Andrea finally stepped into the world as her true self, many expected her career to end. Instead, it reached new heights. She made history as the first openly transgender model to appear on the cover of GQ Portugal. What once seemed like a risk became a symbol of progress. Andrea was no longer just a face on the runway. She became proof that authenticity does not weaken beauty, it gives it depth. Andrea Pejic's story is not simply about transition. It is about choosing truth over comfort, identity over expectation, and courage over fear. In an industry built on illusion, she chose to be real. Carmen Carrera. Before fashion runways and advocacy headlines, Carmen Carrera first stepped into the public spotlight under the bright competitive lights of RuPaul's Drag Race. Her beauty confidence and magnetic charisma immediately set her apart. Week after week, audiences were drawn to her presence. To many viewers, Carmen was a standout drag performer with star potential. But to Carmen herself, that stage was only the beginning of a much deeper and more personal reckoning. After leaving the show, Carmen reached a turning point that would redefine her life. She chose to begin her transition and live openly as the woman she had always known herself to be. It was a decision rooted in honesty, but the response she received was far from welcoming. Instead of applause, she was met with resistance. Many fans and even members of the drag community struggled to separate drag as performance from gender identity as lived reality. To them, Carmen was still viewed as a man in costume. To Carmen, that misunderstanding cut deeply, reducing her existence to an illusion rather than a truth. Her transition forced an uncomfortable but necessary conversation into the public eye. Drag is art, gender identity is not. Carmen refused to let the two be blurred when she openly criticized language used on Drag Race that she believed disrespected transgender women. Backlash followed swiftly. She was accused of being ungrateful, of betraying the community that helped launch her career, and of demanding too much. But Carmen did not back down. Respect, she argued, should never be conditional on silence. Rather than retreating, Carmen chose to move forward. She transformed visibility into purpose, stepping into the fashion world as a model. She walked international runways, appeared in major campaigns, and challenged outdated ideas of beauty and womanhood with every appearance. Carmen was no longer asking for permission to exist. She was claiming her space unapologetically. Beyond modeling, Carmen became a vocal advocate for transgender rights. She used her platform to confront misconceptions head-on, emphasizing that being transgender is not a performance, not a trend, and not a topic for casual debate. It is a lived reality shaped by courage, vulnerability, and the constant demand to be seen as human. Her voice added nuance to conversations often dominated by stereotypes and simplifications. Despite the controversy that followed her, Carmen has repeatedly said she carries no hatred. Growth, she believes, comes through conversation, not cancellation. Her journey is not driven by conflict, but by clarity. It is about reclaiming identity in a world eager to define it for you, and choosing dignity even when that choice costs applause. Carmen Carrera's story is not just about transition. It is about self-respect, about standing still when the world demands explanations, and about proving that authenticity, even when uncomfortable, is always worth the price. If you believe Carmen was right to choose her true identity over public approval, comment 1. If you think she should have stayed silent to protect her career, comment 0. Caitlyn Jenner. Before the world knew her as Caitlyn Jenner, she was Bruce Jenner, a symbol of strength, discipline, and American triumph. In 1976, Bruce stood on the Olympic podium in Montreal with a gold medal around his neck, celebrated as the greatest athlete on earth. To millions watching, he represented the ideal of masculinity: powerful, controlled, victorious, a national hero frozen forever in a moment of glory. Yet behind the applause and patriotic pride was a truth Caitlyn had carried since childhood. Long before fame and medals, Bruce felt drawn to femininity in ways she could neither explain nor escape. Small private moments, such as being fascinated by her mother's and sister's clothing, brought comfort mixed with deep confusion. In an era when gender identity was never openly discussed, those feelings were not just misunderstood, they were treated as forbidden. And so they were buried beneath silence, denial, and shame. Unable to live honestly, Bruce ran in the only direction that felt safe. Sports became an escape. Training offered control over chaos. Competition provided distraction from inner conflict. Winning became validation. Each victory felt like proof that if she could become the strongest man in the world, the voice inside might finally disappear. But no matter how loud the cheers grew, the truth never went silent. As fame followed her into adulthood, the conflict only deepened. Bruce built a life that looked complete from the outside: a husband, a father, a respected public figure admired by millions. Privately, the cost was devastating. Marriages ended not from a lack of love, but because the truth could not remain hidden forever. Attempts to share her struggle were often met with confusion or denial, leaving her feeling more isolated than before. Later, Bruce built a new family with Kris Jenner rising to global fame through Keeping Up with the Kardashians. To the public, Bruce appeared calm, stable, and dependable, the steady anchor of a famous and chaotic household. Behind closed doors, however, the pressure to maintain that image became unbearable. The more successful she became, the harder it was to breathe. Fame amplified the disguise, and the disguise became suffocating. By the age of 65, Bruce reached a breaking point. The choice was no longer between fear and change, but between survival and slow disappearance. Comfort was no longer enough. Stability could not replace truth. She stopped running. In 2015, she introduced herself to the world as Caitlyn Jenner through a historic Vanity Fair cover. The moment sent shockwaves across the globe. It shocked fans, divided opinions, and deeply affected her family. Criticism was loud, questions were endless, but something else happened as well. Conversations began, visibility expanded, and for the first time, Caitlyn felt aligned with herself. Caitlyn's journey was never about attention or fame. It was about freedom, about finally allowing her soul to live without disguise. Her story proves that no achievement can replace authenticity, and no finish line matters more than the moment you stop running from who you truly are. Gina Rosero. For years, Gina Rosero lived two lives. To the fashion world, she was a successful, confident model walking runways and booking campaigns. To herself, she was a woman carrying a secret powerful enough to end everything she had worked for. Gina's story began long before fame. At just 5 years old, she told her mother that she was a girl. Unlike many transgender children, Gina was met with love instead of rejection. Her family supported her, and by the age of 19, she had undergone gender affirmation surgery. Physically, her body finally matched her identity. But socially and professionally, fear took over. As her modeling career grew, Gina learned a hard rule of the industry. Visibility can be dangerous. She was advised to stay quiet to protect her image, to never let anyone know she was transgender. So she complied. She passed. She smiled. She succeeded. And she lived in constant fear that one question, one document, or one headline could destroy her career overnight. For years, Gina carried that weight alone. In 2014, standing on a TED stage, Gina made a decision that would change her life forever. In the middle of her talk, she revealed the truth she had hidden for decades. She came out publicly as a transgender woman. The moment was raw, emotional, and terrifying. She was not just telling her story. She was risking everything. What happened next surprised her. Instead of rejection, Gina received overwhelming support. Colleagues, agents, and friends stood by her, many admitting they had never known her past and that it changed nothing about who she was. For the first time, Gina felt free. The silence that once protected her had also imprisoned her. Coming out did not end her career, it transformed it. Gina became more than a model. She became an activist, using her platform to fight for transgender visibility, inclusion, and equal opportunity, especially within the fashion industry. She spoke openly about the harm of forcing transgender people to hide in order to survive, and the power of authenticity in reclaiming dignity. Gina Rosero's story is not about revealing a secret. It is about choosing honesty over fear and truth over comfort. She proved that visibility, while risky, can also be revolutionary. If Gina's courage moved you and you want to hear more real stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Laverne Cox. Before the world applauded her talent and recognized her voice, Laverne Cox was simply a child trying to survive in a place that left little room for difference. Born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, she grew up in a deeply conservative environment where rigid gender roles, strict religious beliefs, and anything outside the norm were treated as threats. From a young age, Laverne knew she was different. She was drawn to softness, femininity, and self-expression, feelings that came naturally to her but were met with cruelty and rejection. School was never a safe place. Classmates quickly noticed that she did not conform, and teasing soon turned into relentless bullying. That bullying led to isolation, teaching Laverne early on that standing out could be dangerous. Every insult reinforced the same painful message that being herself was something that had to be hidden. At home and in church, the pressure to conform only intensified. Religion was used as a tool for correction rather than compassion, and shame slowly wrapped itself around her sense of self, shaping how she understood her own worth. Dance became Laverne's first escape. Through movement, she could express what words could not, a language beyond speech, a space where her body could exist freely. Although her mother feared judgment and social consequences, she allowed Laverne to take tap and jazz classes while carefully drawing the line at ballet, which she believed crossed too far into femininity. Even with those limits, dance gave Laverne moments of freedom, brief instances where she felt real, alive, and safe. But that freedom was fragile. Growing up surrounded by rejection and fear, Laverne began to believe that something was wrong with her. The weight of shame and self-hatred became unbearable. As a teenager, overwhelmed by despair, she attempted suicide. She survived, but the experience left a permanent scar. It was the darkest moment of her life, and also the moment that forced her to confront the truth. Survival itself became an act of defiance. Determined to live, Laverne made a life-changing decision. She left Alabama and moved to New York City, choosing possibility over fear. There she began a long and difficult transition, both physically and emotionally. Money was tight, acceptance was uncertain, but for the first time she was moving toward herself instead of running away. Her breakthrough came when she was cast as Sophia Bursay in Orange is the New Black. The role was more than a career milestone. It felt like a mirror. Sophia's story of identity struggle and humanity reflected Laverne's own life, and audiences around the world felt that truth. With that performance, Laverne did something revolutionary. She humanized the transgender experience for millions of people who had never truly seen it before. Fame did not soften her message, it sharpened it. Laverne became one of the most visible and powerful advocates for transgender rights, using her platform to speak openly about violence, discrimination, dignity, and representation. She refused to be reduced to a symbol, instead insisting on complexity, honesty, and humanity. Laverne Cox's story is not about overnight success, it is about endurance, about surviving long enough to be seen. And today, as she stands firmly in her truth, she reminds the world of a powerful reality. Being transgender is not a weakness, it is resilience made visible. Chanel West Coast. In the age of social media, a lie can travel faster than the truth ever could, multiplying with every click, share, and joke disguised as harmless entertainment. Few people understand this better than Chanel West Coast, a public figure who unexpectedly found herself at the center of one of the internet's strangest and most persistent rumors. The claim was bizarre, yet convincing enough for many to believe. According to online speculation, Chanel West Coast was supposedly Lee Norris, the actor best known for playing Stuart Minkus on the 1990s sitcom Boy Meets World, who had allegedly disappeared from Hollywood and later transitioned into Chanel. Side by side, photos, memes, and amateur investigations fueled the theory, spreading it as a joke that slowly took on the weight of rumor and misinformation. The truth, however, was simple. Chanel West Coast and Lee Norris are two entirely different people with separate lives, careers, and histories. Yet simplicity does not stop the internet. The rumor caused real consequences. For Lee Norris, it created confusion about his career, with many believing he had vanished from the industry. In reality, he continued acting, appearing in projects such as Gone Girl and various television roles. For Chanel, the rumor became a disturbing reminder of how casually the internet treats identity, especially gender identity, as entertainment. Instead of responding with anger, sarcasm, or public outrage, Chanel chose a different approach. She responded with empathy. Chanel publicly expressed sympathy for Lee Norris, acknowledging how unfair it was for his work and career to be overshadowed by a false narrative he never asked for. More importantly, she addressed the deeper issue behind the rumor. Transgender identity, she emphasized, is not a punchline. It is not a meme. It is a deeply personal journey that involves real physical, emotional, and psychological challenges. Chanel made it clear that while rumors may appear harmless to outsiders, they can reinforce harmful stereotypes and disrespect real transgender people who have fought hard for the right to live authentically. Her response stood out in a digital culture often driven by mockery and outrage. Calm, thoughtful, and grounded, she chose responsibility over reaction. Despite the noise, Chanel West Coast did not allow the rumor to define her. She continued building her career in television, music, and public appearances, maintaining focus and momentum. Her resilience did not come from confrontation, but from clarity. She understood that sometimes the most powerful response is refusing to let misinformation shape your identity. Chanel West Coast's story is not about transition. It is about accountability. It is about recognizing that words matter, jokes carry weight, and rumors have consequences far beyond the screen. In a world where clicks often matter more than truth, her response serves as a reminder that empathy is still a choice and responsibility is still possible. Fallon Fox. In a world where strength is measured by force and masculinity is rarely questioned, Fallon Fox stepped into one of the harshest arenas imaginable. Mixed martial arts is not just a sport, it is a test of dominance, endurance, and pain. And for Fallon, the fight was never limited to the cage. Born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, Fallon knew from an early age that she was different. She felt more comfortable around girls and more aligned with femininity, yet trapped inside expectations she did not choose. In a society that demanded conformity, those feelings became a source of fear and confusion she carried in silence. When Fallon finally came out to her parents as transgender, the reaction was devastating. Her mother struggled to accept the truth while her father refused to believe it, insisting she could be changed. What followed was conversion therapy, a widely discredited practice that left deep emotional scars. Instead of support, Fallon was taught to doubt her own identity. But doubt could not erase truth. Despite family rejection and social pressure, Fallon made a defining decision. She chose to transition knowing it could cost her relationships stability and safety. The journey was isolating and painful, but it was necessary. For the first time, Fallon was moving toward herself. After transitioning, Fallon did the unthinkable. She entered professional MMA and made history as the first openly transgender athlete to. The backlash was immediate. Critics accused her of having an unfair advantage. Strangers questioned her right to compete. Her identity became a public debate discussed by people who had never met her and never stepped into a cage. The hardest blows did not come from opponents but from perception. Before coming out, Fallon was simply an athlete. Afterward, she was reduced to controversy. Respect turned into suspicion. Achievement turned into argument. Still, Fallon refused to walk away. Every fight became more than a match, it became a statement. A declaration that transgender athletes deserve dignity, fairness, and a place in sports. Fallon Fox's story is not just about fighting, it is about resilience, courage, and refusing to disappear. Inside the cage, she faces opponents. Outside it, she challenges a system that questions her existence, and she continues to stand her ground. To stand her ground. To stand her ground. To stand her ground. Chanel West Coast. In the age of social media, a lie can travel faster than the truth ever could, multiplying with every click, share, and joke disguised as harmless entertainment. Few people understand this better than Chanel West Coast, a public figure who unexpectedly found herself at the center of one of the internet's strangest and most persistent rumors. The claim was bizarre, yet convincing enough for many to believe. According to online speculation, Chanel West Coast was supposedly Lee Norris, the actor best known for playing Stuart Minkus on the 1990s sitcom Boy Meets World, who had allegedly disappeared from Hollywood and later transitioned into Chanel. Side by side, photos, memes, and amateur investigations fueled the theory, spreading it as a joke that slowly took on the weight of rumor and misinformation. The truth, however, was simple. Chanel West Coast and Lee Norris are two entirely different people with separate lives, careers, and histories. Yet simplicity does not stop the internet. The rumor caused real consequences. For Lee Norris, it created confusion about his career, with many believing he had vanished from the industry. In reality, he continued acting, appearing in projects such as Gone Girl and various television roles. For Chanel, the rumor became a disturbing reminder of how casually the internet treats identity, especially gender identity, as entertainment. Instead of responding with anger, sarcasm, or public outrage, Chanel chose a different approach. She responded with empathy. Chanel publicly expressed sympathy for Lee Norris, acknowledging how unfair it was for his work and career to be overshadowed by a false narrative he never asked for. More importantly, she addressed the deeper issue behind the rumor. Transgender identity, she emphasized, is not a punchline. It is not a meme. It is a deeply personal journey that involves real physical, emotional, and psychological challenges.